Welcome into Sports 5 Talk. Simone, Eli, Gerhard, Mathangani joining you as we enter the very exciting time of year, guys. It is late October, and Halloween, first of all, is next week. So that's an exciting time for everybody who is parents. But if you're football fans, which, of course, if you're watching the show, it's a good chance you probably are, then you know that it's a very exciting time when it comes to high school football, college football, and everybody starts peeking ahead to the playoff picture at every level of football, Gerhard. It's a good time.
I think it's one of those things like when the leaves start to turn, that's when you get a new brand of football, especially here in the South, because it's finally cold. I think a lot of people are like, I like football weather. But football weather in Tennessee and football weather maybe north of the Mason-Dixon line is a little bit different. So I feel
grew up there, so I can confirm.
Yeah. You don't really get it until this time of year. So not only does the weather change, but the atmosphere and the stakes change, as you said, across all levels of football.
Yeah, they do. And so we'll be talking football, of course, college football week 9, high school football the second to last week, and a ton of region implications on the line. And in a few minutes, we will show you our playoff board. Here's a sneak peek. I have terrible handwriting, but this is the playoff board.
It's not the most legible thing. But.
And here's the thing. We pretty much freehanded this because we already know the playoff picture. It's in our brain, but we have to at least have something to refer to. So we will break this all down. We will talk about the playoff picture. I look ridiculous in what I just did. I don't even know what that was. That's painful. Anyway.
If you're at home, screenshot that and send it to someone.
Please don't. Please don't. Okay. So playoff implications on the line. And I would say that 6A probably has the biggest question marks when it comes to Region 1 because there's 3 teams vying for one spot and doing all of the math, and there's a lot of math and a lot of scenarios and a lot of situations. Any one of these 3 teams in Gulf Shores, McGill-Tulane, or Theodore could have a chance of being in the 4th spot there right now. Now, we know that if everything goes as chalk would say, if there is a chalk in high school football, that Theodore has the highest probability for being the 4th playoff team spot because of their win over Fairhope.
Yeah, it's tiebreakers. So you have to kind of work your brain into 2 different ways. So you have to work your brain into 2-team tiebreakers and 3-team tiebreakers. And they work differently. If it's a 3-team tiebreaker where everyone has beat the other one, you go to your non-region opponents and you have to go to their wins.
Yeah.
You get a point for every one of their wins. Then after that's determined, then you go back to the 2-team tiebreaker, which is, of course, the head-to-head.
Sure.
So I think a lot of people will get confused as to the reason why a game that's not in region helps determine the region seedings and the classifications. But that's the reason why if you're not familiar with it there at home.
Yeah, and that's why a lot of teams, or most teams, will schedule an opponent, non-region opponent, within 2 classes of what class they are in. Because those are the only games that are going to count for you when it comes to tiebreakers in the playoffs. Because if you can't be a 7A team playing a 1A team and have that count for you, obviously, as a non-region opponent. So right now, Theodore has the biggest non-region victory with the win over Fairhope because of Fairhope's wins. Of course, they're a playoff team in 7A Region 1, so they have the upper hand. But as we navigate what this looks like, one of the biggest games, at least in terms of, hey, win and you still have a shot, lose and you probably don't, will be this year's California Dreaming Bowl. And earlier today, we were out at California Dreaming in Spanish Fort. They do a wonderful job, a local restaurant there who supports the Toros, and you just got to love institutions, you got to love restaurants, you got to love these companies that support local student athletes. And they do a really good job of that. And they've been doing this game for the better part of 10 plus years now. And this year it will be McGill-Tulane taking on Spanish Fort on the Hill there on Friday. And this is a huge game for both teams, really, because Spanish Fort wants to continue to have the ability to be a home playoff team, and McGill-Tulane, with a win, can stay in contention for a possible playoff spot. Win or lose, they will still be in contention for that spot, but things are just a little bit prettier should they win.
Yeah, I think if you're McGill-Tulane, you don't want to put – I mean, obviously you know you need this game, but the big thing about this region, we've said it since this region started, that we knew that the margins on this game or these games here at the end of the season would be razor thin.
Yeah.
You mentioned the 2 seed, possible chance to host a playoff game. That's huge for Spanish Fort.
No doubt.
They get a W and they get that. So in my purview here is that if you were to look at this game from 1,000 feet away, will a loss be killer for these teams? No. However, you do know that the loser – will have a little bit of uphill climb.
Sure.
If Spanish Fort loses, they drop down to the 3 seed. You have to go on the road first week of the season or first week of the playoffs. not the best situation that you want to be in. Same thing for McGill. Now you maybe need some help win the next week. And so it's kind of the perfect situation for me. Win and you have all the benefits, and lose and you put a little bit more pressure on yourself 7 days from then.
Well, yeah, going into the next one, because of course we know that Spanish Fort will play St. Paul's next Friday, and that game will determine which one of those two teams is going to be a home playoff team behind Saraland. Of course, they're going to be, Saraland has already clinched the 6A Region 1 title, but it is going to be between Saraland and St. Paul's. That game is at St. Paul's, and even if Spanish Fort loses this week, they would still have a chance to be a home playoff team, if my math is correct, because that would be a 2-loss team.
Correct.
Should they beat St. Paul's, they would still have the tiebreaker as 2-loss teams. So not all is lost for either one of these programs, win or lose. Make no mistake, it's senior night on the Hill in Spanish Fort. They want to win this game. We had the chance to speak with David Faulkner over at McGill-Tulane and Chase Smith at Spanish Fort as they prepare for Friday night. Here, guys, let's take a listen.
I said it's 1-0 each week. We're coming off a bye. We're excited. The kids are excited to play. This is a region game, our last home game on the Hill for the regular season. So senior night, California Dreaming Bowl, a lot of exciting things going on. And, every region game is set for just a really, really great game. So our kids are excited.
Really the big thing is it's just our next opportunity, chance for us to go out and play a big ball game against a quality football team and test ourselves and see if we're, if we're up to the challenge and we can find a way to win the ball game.
So both guys certainly keeping things in perspective. Two coaches who were very humble in their approach kind of to the game. I don't think that they think that they're anything bigger than a high school football coach, which you can have a huge impact on the guys that are around you. But at the end of the day, they don't take their jobs too seriously. And we certainly know that there are some coaches who are like that. Now I'm teeing you up. To say something.
I knew you were going with that. But no, and I think that obviously like when it comes to these kind of games, you think about what happens in the spring. You think about all the work you put in the summertime. You think about all the work that you put in, not only in spring practice, but what you do for other sports and being able to come down. And it comes down to these Friday nights, and it comes down to a few plays in all these football games. And so, you want to put it in its proper context, but at the same time, it can be really big, and especially a team like you said with Spanish Fort, senior night coming up. There's no guarantees you get a home game in the playoffs. The bracket could fall in weird ways, and if you don't get that home game, there's no guarantees here. So you want to play obviously well in front of your home fans that last game. So we'll see how it all shakes out Friday.
And the other side of this kind of three-headed monster of what the fourth team will look like, of course, was a big part of last week when Theodore traveled to Gulf Shores in a game that literally went down to the wire. Theodore ended up winning that game, a walk-off win on a Hail Mary tipped ball that somehow ended up in the hands of a Bobcat player. And then, of course, a big win for Theodore. And this highlight reel is not going to have that play, but this was the type of game where you didn't really know which way it was going to go going into it, and you really didn't know which way it was going to go going into the fourth quarter either. Just a back-and-forth battle. Theodore came out fighting, but Gulf Shores kind of weathered the storm. They haven't been the Gulf Shores that we saw in 5A a year ago, but they still have athletes. It's not like Mark Hudspeth and them, don't have the dudes that they had a year ago. But now these two teams are all fighting for the spot with McGill for the fourth and final playoff position in 6A Region 1.
And it didn't look that way when Theodore started the season 0-3. You might remember this team really, really struggled to start the season. Yeah, obviously had that overtime loss in Game 2 against Spanish Fort. We thought some people might have thought the wheels might have been falling off, but credit to the Bobcats. They were able to rally and put a little run together. A 2-game winning streak going into this game against Gulf Shores. And as you mentioned, ended up winning on a thriller. And it's been that kind of season for Theodore, being able to find ways to win these games really late. They haven't been scoring. We've seen high-flying games, but this team has really relied on defense and running the football. And they were able to, ironically, be able to get a tipped pass to be able to score at the very end to collect their third straight win. But as you mentioned, the importance of this game as far as the playoffs go, if any of this comes down to head-to-head between Theodore and Gulf Shores, that tip pass will mean the difference maybe between playing and sitting at home.
Yeah, and if McGill, again, if everything goes scratch, and the way that we're looking at it is, okay, the next two games. So let's just say Spanish Fort beats McGill, which I think that Spanish Fort would be the favorite in that game. I don't think there's any denying that. And then McGill-Tulane is going to be, they play an opponent in week 2, in 2 weeks from now, that is a winnable game. So let's just say that they split these two, and everything else goes scratch with Gulf Shores and St. Paul's. it's going to be a 3-way tie, I guess, so to speak, between Theodore, Gulf Shores, and McGill-Tulane. So if everything goes kind of as we expect it to, again, like we said off the top of the show, Theodore would have the best non-region win in the win over Fairhope. Everybody will have beaten each other, and that is kind of how that goes about in the AHSAA. And so then Theodore would get that 4th spot. However, McGill-Tulane and Gulf Shore still very much alive in that playoff race should Theodore drop this one to Saraland and then next week possibly lose.
Yeah, because they have 2 games left. Both these games are very, very crucial. And so we're doing a situation, if you're sitting at home, we're doing a situation basically if you freeze frame the standings as we speak.
Yeah.
This is what it would look like. And then we were kind of rolling through the ramifications because, like you said, with 2 games for Theodore, 2 games for Spanish Fort, 2 games for McGill-Tulane, 2 games for St. Paul's, there's still a lot of football to be played in a condensed amount of time.
Sure.
And that really can teeter this whole thing multiple different ways, maybe outside of Saraland staying at that 1 seed.
Yeah, and speaking of Saraland, I mean, they look as advertised. As we know, the Spartans had KJ Lacey back at quarterback in their big win against St. Paul's. He looked like he had never even missed a step.
Yeah, he's been that way ever since. I remember last week we covered him being able to go to our game of the week against St. Paul's, a really good defense. He had missed the last 2.5 games due to injury. Jamison Roberts stepped right in and played very well. It didn't look like the offense really missed a beat.
Definitely.
Passed it to Deshaun Spencer. Santay McWilliams is still excellent. The defense was still really solid as well. And KJ came back in, and to your point, he had the brace on, so he looked a little bit different. But the way his game was,
the way his arm looked didn't look any different.
Exactly, and I think that obviously they were resting him to be able to make sure that he's right for the last part of the season. And everybody talks about these last few games here and just how important they are. And for Saraland, a team that hasn't lost all season long, it would be easy for them to maybe take a step back when they lost their starting quarterback. But to me, it shows you just how much Jeff Kelly has entered that program, that next man up mentality.
Yeah.
And we've seen it from a 2-time Mr. Football winner, Ryan Williams. Now that offense still clicking with Deshaun Spencer, and we're seeing it the exact same way at the quarterback position as well. And I'm sure, because we've seen now 2 games of it, that it looks like KJ is at least completely healthy on the field on Friday night.
Well, I think that we know that Jeff Kelly is trying to win 5 games in November, and that's very hard to do. Yeah. And to win 5 in a row, to go on the playoffs, so to go 10-0 is just unbelievably difficult, especially when you're playing in 6A Region 1. To then go win 5 more is not easy. They didn't do it 2 years ago when they won the state title. They lost to Theodore. Everyone seems to forget that. And then last year they didn't do it. They won a state title 2 years ago, and then last year they didn't do it because obviously they didn't win the last game.
Right.
And so it's very hard to be completely perfect. I know that, it's very rare for that to happen. Even these Nick Saban coached national championship teams, hardly, I think maybe one of them ever went undefeated. That was like the COVID year. Maybe 2 of them. I had to look back on that.
Yeah, and it almost got to where, and I can say this now because he's retired, it almost got to where you would think that he would actually kind of somewhat like you don't like the loss in the moment.
Yeah, but
you like how it can reframe your team.
Yes, so long as it doesn't just totally derail you from the opportunity to win a championship.
Exactly.
So, well, if you're just tuning in, this is Sports 5 Talk, guys. We are just getting started. It's only 8:15, and who knows when we'll end this show, because Gerhard and I could literally talk for probably 17 hours when it comes to the playoff scenario. And if you weren't here early on, I wanted to show again our playoff board. Okay. So here's the thing. People were criticizing my handwriting, and I really don't even care. Okay? So here's the thing. This is what this looks like. And here, this is like every other coaching staff in the state who is possibly in the playoff realm. They're all over here mathing the math and trying to figure out who's in and who's out. So we just talked about 6A. We're going to talk about 7A now. And this one is already determined not only down here, but also in some other parts of the state, in the Birmingham area specifically, which is where 7A Region 1 teams will match up for the first round. And reminder for this year, for folks who are forgetting, the state has changed the 7A playoff situations this season. So it's no longer going to be just one region up against another. Like, there's 4 total, because there's 32 7A teams. It's no longer going to be Region 1 versus 2 and 3 versus 4, and whoever wins it gets to the end of the game. No, it's actually going to be like this round robin. Best team out of each region has an opportunity to be there into the game. Honestly, if you don't like it, well, go home, because that's what they're going to do. And I think it gives everybody an opportunity. If you're down here, if you're a fan of football in 7A Region 1, you're celebrating.
Yeah.
Because we haven't had a whole lot of chances for 7A teams to make it very far.
Yeah, and I think when it came to the playoff situation, it almost seemed like rinse repeat, the way that it all broke down as far as these regions go. And so they decided to mix it up, and I really like it. And if you take a look at the 7A bracket, it'll look a little bit different from all the other ones where you have a representative of each region in each quadrant. So you mentioned that the teams that go in. Yeah. So you have two sides of the bracket, and everybody else is north-south, but it's not that way in 7A. It's kind of like almost reminds you a little bit of the NCAA tournament bracket, just condensed, when you get to the regional final.
Yeah.
So I like it. I think it'll create some really interesting football. We can go through the matchups, but I think that it'll be a lot of fun and some really interesting matchups for teams that'll be coming down here to 251.
It gives everybody an opportunity. And so let's talk about some of these matchups, because last week, of course, we determined the 7A, not us, but on the field at least, we determined it because of the outcome of this one. MGM and Baker in the Battle of West Mobile. And Baker came out and gave MGM everything that they wanted and then some early in this game. They went up 14-0 at home, and I think Juan Johnson had his guys as fired up and as prepared for any game that they have played all season long. And Zach Golston straight up told us this week they came out and they played like trash. He's like, we were awful to start this game. Yeah. And then they settled down. MGM has not had to play from behind for very much in the last couple of years, G.
No, and that's one of their strengths. But as you said, they got behind the 8 ball a little bit, turned the ball over early on. Baker got an easy touchdown to start out the game. You're seeing another touchdown here. We honored Katori Marion. We talked to Tate Graham. We talked to Donovan Hudson, all of Baker last week. And you had to know, as you see Coach fired up right here.
And that was a Speedy Wheeler there.
Exactly,
and a running back for Baker, who hadn't even played all season.
Hadn't played all season. He was hurt the entire year. Came in, looks the part. MGM, though, they settled down. They received Elston being able to get the touchdown pass. Our Zaxby's player of the week this week, and a big quarterback in Shondell Harris came up huge for this football team.
Yep.
And it's a situation where I think that you have a team that last year MGM was doing all this for the first time. They were playing in big games for the first time.
No question.
They made a deep run in the playoffs for the first time, and they got a taste of that. And then now
they were under the radar.
They were under the radar.
And they're not anymore.
Right.
And we talked to Zach Golston about that. We said, what is it like now to be the hunted? You're no longer the Cinderella story.
Yep.
And he's loving it, as he should. They've earned this right to be the team that is 2-time, back-to-back region champs. He has orchestrated a turnaround that is unprecedented in high school football, and that's just the truth. And he's done it primarily with his own guys, which is really unprecedented.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not just like creating this all-star team and just, balling at the beach and getting all these guys that are just coming over there to Sims and hanging out and playing. I mean, he recruited his own locker room.
Right.
So,
right. But 4 halls.
No question. So now MGM is going to host a playoff game, and they're going to get Vestavia Hills. Yeah. And so Vestavia is man, that's what did their coach say there about
Robert Evans?
Evans, and they're known as Pop. If you know Coach Evans, he's a former coordinator at defensive coordinator over at Hoover back in their just day of winning a state title every single year before Thompson became that team. He was at Mountain Brook, and now he's the head coach at his alma mater, Vestavia Hills. Yep. And I think he says going into a game against Carver, Montgomery, and he said something like, they have a bunch of SEC players, and we have a bunch of
Fijis.
Pie, what is it?
Fijis.
He said 2 things. He said something and Fijis. He said
maybe pie caps.
Pie caps. Okay.
If you're a pie cap out there, if you're in that fraternity, we're not making fun. We're just paraphrasing his words.
Paraphrasing. That was an actual quote. That was straight up. So, I mean, say it again. What was it? Pie caps. I don't want to accidentally cuss or something.
We got a bunch of pie caps and Fijis. They got a bunch of Bama players and Miami commits and whatnot.
And it was pretty hilarious.
It was hilarious. And it went everywhere. And I think people say they said the quiet part out loud. I thought it was really, really funny at the time. And I'm pretty sure it played well in his locker room as well.
Everyone loved it. I mean, and here's the deal. They're a bunch of hardworking kids. They're not future. They're going to be the guys cheering for future SEC players.
That's what he said too.
That's what Evans said.
That's the very next sentence.
Anyways, so MGM is going to welcome down Vestavia Hills. But the game that I'm going to really keep my eye on, and I'm just looking forward to this game in a couple of weeks, is Baker is going to host Hewitt-Trussville. And if you don't know kind of the behind the scenes of why that's a big game, Juan Johnson is the new head football coach at Baker High School, and he's done just a phenomenal job. Cannot be understated how good they have been, because their only loss this season going into the Battle of West Mobile was against number 1 in 4A Jackson, who we know is could beat anybody in any classification. I think they're one of the best teams in the state, top to bottom, hands down. Someone asked me who's the best team in Mobile. My first answer was not even Saraland. My first answer was Jackson.
Yeah.
Now,
pound for pound, I
know that Saraland beat Jackson. Don't come at me in the comments. I'm aware of that. I still think just straight up right now, I think that what their top end looks like in the next few weeks could be really, really good.
It's like the pound for pound argument in like wrestling, in MMA, and boxing.
Yeah.
You're using that argument more so than it is like what these teams did on the field. Am I wrong?
That's what I'm saying. And when you have guys like anyways, we'll get to 4A in just a minute. However, Baker gave them everything that they wanted with guys who were talented, who aren't like nationally ranked talented like you have over at Jackson, but guys who were talented. They lose that game late in the game, then they lose to MGM. But what he has orchestrated at Baker has been really, really good. And if you're a Hornets fan, guys, I mean, you should be excited about what Juan Johnson has done already. This is a guy who came from a program in Hewitt-Trussville who's competed against the best of the best year in and year out in 7A Region 3. That has been the best region of football, make no mistake, for years with Hoovers and the Thompsons and just really, really, really good programs. And so, and Hewitt-Trussville has always kind of been like that third, kind of fourth echelon team there. But he helped build that offensive monster there. He's come down here. He kind of integrated this hurry-up offense, which quite frankly, I didn't know if it was going to work. I mean, you're looking at a sophomore quarterback who was playing baseball in the spring, who's getting integrated to the system, who we didn't even know until like week 5 this year because we didn't even know his name.
He didn't go to spring training because he was playing baseball.
Yeah, so this is Tate Graham, and he's been great. And so I cannot wait to see Baker host Hewitt-Trussville because I think Baker deserves that opportunity to welcome in a traditional powerhouse program and prove that Baker is the second biggest public school in the state of Alabama for a reason. And Juan Johnson is a soft-spoken but fiery guy when he needs to be. He's respectful. He's kind. He cares about those kids. He loves on those kids. And so I am cheering for them like I do all of our local teams. But I want to see them do well. And it's a big opportunity for Baker to have that game at home.
It's when Kirby Smart comes to Tuscaloosa to play Nick Saban. It's like
people don't
anytime.
Like Kirby. People don't like Kirby.
Well, I'm saying people don't like Kirby. I'm saying like the same.
Maybe it's just me that doesn't like Kirby.
I meant like this in the same context of like you root for a guy to do well against a team that he used to coach for. And for those who aren't familiar with the Huskies this year, they're 7-2 going into this season, averaging 37 points a game. So
their only losses are against the best two teams in 7A.
That's correct.
I mean, if they're the three, then they've only lost to Hoover and Thompson.
Right. And that Thompson game honestly was one of those games that to me it was 15-7 was the final score in that one, and 8-7 was the final score in the Hoover game. So they played both the top two teams neck and neck all season long. But you think about when any assistant goes to take over a program for the first time, and just what that means for that guy and for what he's able to do with his new program. I'm right there with you. If you're in Hornet Nation, that is a must-go-to game to be able to support Baker in that fantastic matchup in a couple weeks.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's funny. I had somebody ask, I haven't really thought about the best team. Well, you know what? At the end of this, towards the end of the show, we'll give our takes on who truly is the best team in Mobile, which really, for the sake of the playoffs doesn't matter, but it's a good conversation. It's a good conversation starter.
I like it.
Yeah.
Best in the 251, best south. Let's say best south of Montgomery.
Yeah. So y'all give me your thoughts in the comments and any other questions, guys. If you're just tuning in and this is Sports 5 Talk, Gerhard and Simone joining you, just kind of an extension of our normal day-to-day sportscast, and we like to have this platform to kind of just expand on the playoffs and talk sports and just chat with our viewers and be able to just have a conversation with you guys and peel back the curtain on our coverage. Now, the other two teams that are going to represent Class 7A Region 1 in the playoffs. So, of course, we have MGM as the 1, Baker as the 2. It's going to be Daphne as the 3 and Fairhope as the 4. Because last week in the War on the Shore, it ended up being Daphne victorious in this game under Kenny King, who was our Reese Senior Bowl Coach of the Week. But a back-and-forth battle, Gerhard, it's not – I mean, you have to tip your hat to a Fairhope team that feels like they got up for this game, so to speak. Not to say that Tim Carter hasn't gotten his guys ready to go in any battle, but – they gave a heck of an effort in this one.
And they had to, because Daphne ended up it's a team that was coming into the season, a lot of talk about them, especially on their defense. But they opened their game up here, Simone, with a huge special teams play. There is no better way to open up a game than with a touchdown on the opening play of the football game. And credit to Tim Carter and his group. They did a good job of being able to settle down, being able to put some points on the board, got a big safety here, scored right after that as well. And And Fairhope was a team that coming into this, they were riding some momentum as well. They had a big win, I believe, over Foley a couple of weeks ago. And obviously this is a program that won, I think, 3 games last year, Fairhope did. So they've really been able to rally the troops and have a much, much better season this year.
Yep.
And as you said, Daphne did what they needed to do, especially late in this football game, to be able to come away with that big win. 35-22 was the final there, but more importantly, clinching that spot in the playoffs. And you never know. Can the 3 seed go to a 2 seed in another region? Those are always the most highly contested games in that first round, the 3 seed versus 2 seed typically. And I think for Daphne, it's like, hey, we are generating some momentum here. Now on a 3-game winning streak, and what can they do to close out the year?
Yeah, and so the matchups for both of these teams, because I think that it was a little bit of a surprise for some folks in the Birmingham area. Thompson did not win that region, so it's not going to be Thompson as the 1. It's actually Thompson as the 2. So Thompson will host Daphne in the 2-3 matchup. That's, of course, going to be a couple weeks from now. And then Fairhope will be at – I got this right? Fairhope will be at Hoover. Yeah, okay. I don't know why for a second I was just second-guessing myself. Yes, but Fairhope will be at Hoover. And so a big challenge for both of those programs, but nonetheless, I mean, you'd rather be playing than sitting at home that week.
Yeah, I mean, everybody would want to play playoff football. This is the 5 weeks that everybody talks about, and you never know. Any given day, any given Sunday is what they talk about the NFL, but any given Friday as well. And I think all these teams give themselves a chance if they line it up on Friday nights.
I'm laughing over here because now folks are asking who has the best uniform. So, okay, we're going to answer we're going to give our takes on all of these things here in just a bit. Okay, let's so we have the 7A, we talked 6A. Guys, if you're just tuning in, this is Sports 5 Talk. Simone joining you, talking high school football right now. As we look ahead to this week, there are certain games that we kind of have circled as far as playoff contention. Who's in, win and you're in, lose and you're teetering or you're out, win and you get a region championship. And in 5A, we determined the region championship last week in the big battle, top 10 battle between the 2 best defenses in the state for 5A. That's Viger and Williamson. We knew this was going to be a dogfight, and it was. Gerhard, we were out there for a pretty nice-looking crowd there at Ladd Stadium. Now, a notable part of this is that Sammy Dunn is still not playing right now for Viger. We talked to Sammy. I think he's still looking to see, his hand and wrist situation improve a little bit. He knows that the priority is the last 5 games that they're hoping to play in the postseason. But Williamson gets it done, or Viger gets it done nonetheless over Williamson in a game that was mostly a defensive battle.
They had a lot of confidence going into this game, despite having to go, as you said, to their backup quarterback. But they have playmakers everywhere. This being one of them, Carlos Greenpants Benjamin, and he's been a phenomenal player all season long. But the defense was the key for Viger, and you mentioned it at the top of this, the fact that they came in with the 2 best defenses, and Viger played like it. There was times, and as you're seeing now, Williamson had a few spurts on offense, but they were unable to get into the end zone. It seemed like any time they crossed the 50-yard line, that Viger defense was right there. There's Jabarius Guerra. Everybody's been talking about him, a class of 27 prospect, one of the best ones in the entire country. He was huge all night. That defensive line was swarming. We got a chance to go out to Viger's practice to preview this game earlier, and I was watching. I was out there shooting a defensive line drill, and one of the D linemen, and I forgot to get his name, but he goes, "Yeah, this is the best D line in the state." And he just kind of muttered it, and I was like, you know what?
With confidence,
I believe you. I think he wanted me to get their drill, which I did, and I shot their drill, But they look like the best defensive line in the state of Alabama last week.
If you're not confident, why aren't you playing? So, exactly. I mean, I love that. That's totally fine with me. And listen, they, like you said, and like Mackenzie said after the game, another shutout.
Yeah.
And he straight up said, if someone's better than us, I want to see him.
I want to see it.
I want to play him, he said. I mean,
yeah.
he put that out there. And I mean, that's good confidence. I mean, he can be a little cocky, but listen, he won a state title a few years ago. Yeah. So can you knock him? Probably not.
And I think this is a Viger team that you think, when you think good Viger football, a lot of times you think a high-scoring offense, a lot of points. And I think that just watching this team and their culture now kind of swing defense in 2024 when defense has basically been legislated out of the game, to me, I really, really like it. And I like the way that this team is playing. And going into the playoffs, who knows? We could see this matchup again a little bit later on as well. So nobody's counting Williamson out because of one Friday night performance. But But this Viger team looks hard to beat. And as John McKenzie said, if there's a better defense out there, I want to see it.
Yeah, no question. In 5A, this is where things are going to get a little bit interesting going into Friday night's game. So UMS Wright will host Faith Academy in a game where UMS will be the favorite. Faith having a down year one under Coach Speakman, lost guys late in the summer, and still trying to kind of get their bearings straight. Coach Speakman excited about what Faith Academy can bring in the younger guys that are coming up, and the guys are getting valuable playing time right now. But UMS with a big opportunity, win, and they are in at the 4. Citronelle is going to be the 3. They've already secured that spot a couple of weeks ago, despite losing Dalen Edmonds at quarterback due to the situation a couple of weeks ago with the fight in the stands. So they're going to have a different quarterback going into the playoffs. Citronelle is going to be the 3. Right now, UMS looking to secure the 4th spot. BC Reign also with an opportunity to be that team. So UMS will play Faith Academy, and BC Reign will host Viger. So here's pretty much how this will play out. UMS wins, they're in regardless. Because if Viger were to win, they're going to have the tiebreaker.
Right.
If both teams were to lose, Gerhard, correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't have the numbers in front of me at the moment, it's going to be UMS because of the tiebreaker head-to-head.
Correct.
BC Reign needs to get a win over Viger to have a chance. They need to see UMS lose. 2 things that, if you're just looking at the chalk, is not what is probably going to be the if you're betting on the game, that's not what you're betting on.
Right. But both teams, as we sit right now, have those 3 losses. And so, like you said, BC Reign really needs Viger to get that, BC Reign needs UMS Right to get that 4th loss, and they need to win one more in order to secure it. But you also mentioned it as well. The Citronelle BC Reign game, that game was now huge. You mentioned the fact that they did not have Dalen Edmonds, won that game by a point or 2, I believe.
1 point with a field goal like in the final minute at home.
Yeah.
Homecoming. I mean, checked every single box for, honestly, hats off again. I mean, we've already gave Jason Rowell and company the kudos for that game, but that was a really rough week for them. I mean, we had reported earlier in the week that they had lost their quarterback, that there was 2 dads fighting in the stands. Just not a good situation. And a situation that a lot of guys have regretted. And I think one of those things that you wish you could take it back, and you can't. And everyone has owned up to the consequences of that, whether they like it or not. And again, it sucks. It's just the reality of what it is. Yeah. But pretty much everything was against Citronelle and going into that week, and they still got it done against a very a talented BC Reign team that lost a lot from last year. Their best senior class, a senior class that Coach Yeldon had totally brought up himself when it included his son at quarterback, and I think they're excited about what the future looks like. But right now, they're playing with a lot of young guys. Yeah,
they are. And they had to, because, like you said, that senior class was so deep last year. I think 17 guys, a few of them signed in colleges. We covered their signing day, led by their quarterback, Amari Yelding, who's having, he's now in college football as well. And so this is a BC Reign team that had good leadership last year, but they had to rely on a lot of young guys going into this season. Yeah. They said they've shown some signs of hope and of promise as they move forward, and they have obviously a carbon copy of last year. They have a reference point from last year to be able to make a strong run. But as you said, the UMS Wright BC Reign game, because UMS Wright won that game head to head 15-0, that will be the determiner of that 3-4 if they are to tie. So the Red Raiders need to win and need a little help as well. Yeah, for sure. If you're a UMS fan, you're probably feeling good about where you are right now, at least being in. The road ahead, I think Terry Curtis knows that he maybe doesn't have the guys top to bottom that he's had in previous years. It just maybe the 1 or 2 skill guys away from really competing for a region title and maybe making a playoff run, but you also never know. I mean I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Terry can't coach a team deep into the playoffs. The dude's won 8 titles in 25 years. Exactly. I mean, that's pretty good. That's a pretty good number. So anyways. he knows how to do it. Anyway. One quick last thing on this, and I just now noticed it just a stream of consciousness here. Viger won the region championship with the backup quarterback. Actually, like their 4th quarterback. Yes, very true. Citronelle secured the 3 spot with their backup quarterback as well. That next man up mentality, we're seeing it across the board. And if you lose your guy that takes it every snap, there's ways to continue to win and get yourself into the playoffs, and 2 teams that have done that. And that's kind of the moral of the story when it comes to where football is right now. If you don't have that second string guys, if you don't have those people that can step right in and be able to run the offense or manage the defense and just be the leader on that other side of the ball, or lead the locker room when one of your guys goes down, I mean, you're probably you're not going to be able to go be elite, because high school football, it takes a toll on your body. You're going to lose guys, hopefully not for the season, but I mean, you're going to get guys knocked out of plays, knocked out of games. And if your entire team
is dependent on one guy and you are in 4 and higher A football, you're not going to win.
No.
You can do that in 1 and 2A and 3A football, and that's not to knock those schools. You can do it because the roster has like 25 guys total.
Right.
So it's okay that you have one guy you can feed the ball 40 times a game.
Exactly.
You're not going to do that in 6A and above football.
Not a collision sport, and as you mentioned, with the depth of the bodies that other teams already have, you're playing at a disadvantage if you're only relying on that top shelf talent.
Yeah, no doubt. If you're just tuning in, it is Wednesday. We are previewing Week 10 of the high school football season, also looking at the playoff picture. Before we continue on in 4A and look at the playoff pictures there, I do want to mention some of the games that we will be covering tomorrow night as Week 10 continues. Williamson will host LaFleur. That's a 5A Region 1 battle there. It'll be at Ladd Stadium. JU Blackshear will be at Bayshore Christian. That'll be the Eagles' final game of the season. Not just their final home game, but their final game. They were going to play next week, but their opponent canceled, so this is going to be their last game of the year. And then St. Luke's and Chickasaw will battle it out in a game that will determine who the 4 is in that region. And if you haven't seen already, we have our playoff board, like every other coaching staff. We pretty much consider ourselves a coaching staff.
We got the solidifiers, and
so
if this happens, this will happen.
So in 2A Region 1, Clark County, we'll talk about the Bulldogs in a moment. They're already the 1, JU Blackshear, Washington County. There's some stuff going down in Washington County right now. They're going through some stuff. Did anything come down from the state from Washington County?
Not that I've seen outside
yet.
Of the not yet.
Well, their coach. I mean, their coach is out.
Right.
And the talk. I mean, the talk is that there could be some stuff coming out from the state.
Right.
That's just the talk.
Yeah.
We'll see what that looks like.
We'll see what that.
But for now, they're the 3. Chickasaw and St. Luke's will be battling for the 4th spot tomorrow. Thursday night lights at Chickasaw.
This is one of these things where, you know what? The board looks like chaos, but I'm telling you, it's got a lot of
I'm telling you, it is chaos.
It's got a lot. It
looks like chaos because it is chaos. And quite frankly, just give us a week when we're talking about this time, and people start turning everybody else in, and then we're like, okay, wait, where's the eraser?
I was literally about to say we have the spray and the eraser just in case some teams need to be bumped up or bumped down, or other teams need to be put in. But this is this time of year, and we talked about, and you mentioned in Class 2A where Clark County, a team that started off the season in the top 10 polls, was in a state championship game not that long ago. They seem to now, over the last 3-4 weeks, been able to get back into round back into form. So we'll see how they look. But a huge game for St. Luke's, a win and you're in kind of situation there as well. So obviously it's a big week just in general, but even for our teams here that where it looks like everything is solidified, still could be a lot of good football being played here this Thursday and Friday night.
Yes, no question about that. All right, let's keep things rolling, guys, as we talk about some 4A football. And if you're talking 4A football, there is one team that comes to mind, and it is those dudes right there, G.
Jackson Aggies, led by, there you see Landon Duckworth and Xavier Crowell, better called EJ, the top running back in the entire country and one of the top dual threat quarterbacks in the country right there is Landon Duckworth. Simone, what really distinguishes this team, and what makes me, in my mind, the way that you analyze sports, the difference between good and great is when good teams put it on great teams put it on good teams. And the way that Jackson was able to beat St. Michael, the way that Jackson was able to beat Mobile Christian, it just shows you, because those two are really good teams, region champions in other regions. Yeah. It just feels like Jackson
this is Mobile Christian. Mobile Christian, in these highlights right here, they just won a state title in a different classification, but a state title is state title.
And they had one of the best defenses in the entire state last year. And that's our buddy, the assistant coach over there.
Talking trash, man. When you got those dudes, I'd be talking trash too.
Who wants to see us?
Nobody.
Exactly.
Nobody.
But Jackson seems like a team that is laser focused right now. And we alluded to this last week, and I don't think it can be overstated just how much winning a state championship in another sport has really locked this team in. They know that euphoric feeling of winning it in basketball. They did it last year with some of the main guys that did it on the court last year. And I think that there's a champion's mentality in that locker room. They don't care that they're number one. They don't care that they're number one. No. It doesn't matter if you're number one at Halloween. It matters if you're number one in December 1st or whatever that game is played. This team plays like a team that's focused on that, and they're on a mission right now. But huge game, coming up in the next over the next few weeks for sure. But I expect Coach Flo and the guys to continue to keep that deadbeat, that eye on the prize there, the blue mat.
Yeah, and it's true, because when we go out and give our Player of the Week awards, you can get a feel. And this is us peeling back the curtain a little bit, but you can get an idea of who's been there, who's never been there, who doesn't care, who's grateful, which is most of them.
Yeah.
And who's like, okay, like, thank you. Can someone hold my plaque and my Zaxby's gift card? I'm excited to get chicken after practice, but I got some work to do first. And Jackson was very much like that. I mean, when we went up there to give Landon Duckworth the Player of the Week award, grateful, kind.
Yeah.
Coach Flo was great. You know, we spoke with EJ. He was wonderful. I mean, you could just tell. But it was time to practice, you know? And, like, and I kind of love that, though, because, like, they were excited that we were there. You know, they were grateful. You mentioned, like, hey, they like watching the show. We appreciate that for sure. Fifth quarter on Friday nights, presented by the Senior Bowl. But it was like, okay, we have some work to do. When you look, you know, we're going to put this in our back pocket, and we're going to move forward. And so you can tell there's definitely a mission when it comes to the Jackson Aggies. And they also feel like they kind of had a letdown last year when they lost to Booker T. Washington in the third round, right?
I mean, I literally was pulling it up just to see.
My brain,
we
bro.
share a brain here.
Yeah.
But no,
we share a brain and we don't even need the notes, dog. That's where we're at. So.
Exactly. But I couldn't remember if it was Andalusia or Booker T. Washington because they felt like last year they had a team that could win a state championship. And I don't disagree with that notion. They had a team last year that could win a state championship. But they were motivated. They were fueled. And it feels like that 2017 game from a year ago is still fresh on their minds right here this year.
Yeah. Just because we have folks asking, well, Ryan, I know you're asking about 1A Region 1. We're going to get there in just a second, I promise. Let's look at the rest of the 4A here on the handy-dandy map because 4A is interesting for the most part. I think it's, well, we got Jackson. We got St. Michael locked in there as the 2. And this is down in the corner here. Orange Beach and Mobile Christian will be pretty much vying for the 3 and the 4 spot. I think we feel pretty strongly that it will be Mobile Christian followed by Orange Beach because of the head-to-head, maybe regardless of outcome for this next week, G. I do know that St. Michael and Orange Beach will play this week in a game that St. Michael would be, I guess, favored in if you were just looking at the chalk. But, man, if you're Orange Beach, you are feeling good about life. We have talked about Orange Beach every single week, proudly, because what they have been able to do there at Orange Beach and just totally just revive this program that won one game a year ago. And, they clinched a playoff spot like 3 weeks ago.
Right.
And so, I mean, you got to tip your cap to just what they've been able to do there for the Makos program and a team that just a year ago just really did not have any identity at all.
Hat tip to Coach Wade Waldrop, what he's done with that program. And there's a lot of juice right now. There's a lot of energy. If you've seen the news, you know about what's coming for their facilities, and they're bringing it on the field this year. And as you mentioned, a big game coming up this week. That got that big game against St. Michael. Yeah. But as you mentioned, they clinched a playoff spot not that long ago, and I think they tweeted it. They put it on social media like that night. Like
like they were they were ready to totally take ownership of that. No question. We just got a question, G, about does W.S. Neal have a chance? And okay, so according to this here, they're not out of it. But I'd have to sit here and do the math, guys, to be honest, because we did a lot of this math yesterday, and I did not think that was that they were in the picture anymore. So I TBD on that, to be honest with you. I do feel pretty strongly that it's Orange Beach and Mobile Christian as the 2 teams there. But I don't want to just sit here and discredit whether W.S. Neal. Gerhard, you pull that up.
I'm pulling up the standings as you speak.
Okay. Okay, so let's talk about 3A really quick, because that's where we are going to find our game of the week. And G, I'll talk this while you check out if you can figure out the W.S. Neal situation. But so 3A Region 1 is already a lock as far as who the playoff teams are and who they're not going to be. So in 3A, we're going to have TR Miller, Bayside, Hillcrest, and XL as the 4 teams that are in. Flomaton, Cottage Hill Christian, Monroe County will be out in terms of the postseason this year. However, we do not have a region champion yet. And our game of the week will be over at Bayside Academy, where the Admirals welcome in TR Miller in a game that will determine who takes the 3A Region 1 crown. And the reason being is because Bayside Academy both teams are currently undefeated in region play. Though Bayside Academy does have 1 loss this season, they went to Hillcrest, beat a really good Hillcrest team, which I think was just a total turning point for Barrett Trout. I say turning point. I mean, heck, they haven't lost. I mean, they're 7-1. I don't even know why I keep talking. I mean, apologies, people at Bayside. It's fine if you want to come to me and tell me I don't know what I'm talking about. For some reason, they've been like an under the radar. They have been in the top 10. I think that a lot of people just didn't think that Bayside was going to be that guy because they lost Sammy Dunn late in the year when he transferred to Viger. And, I mean, Trotter is just shuffling the deck and trying to figure out who's going to play quarterback. And I mean, dang, man, like kudos to Bayside for just being just resilient, so to speak. And they're going to get a very tough TR Miller team, a team that we have had the chance to watch a couple of times this year. I mean, I would not want to bet in this game, to be honest with you, because you want to say the athletes are in favor of TR Miller. This has been the number 1 ranked team in the state. Bayside has certainly, everything I just described, Bayside has absolutely just taken pride in being those guys that have flown under the radar, and now they're 7-1 and looking at a possible region title.
Yeah, and you think about the Hillcrest Evergreen TR Miller game and how that game went down to the wire, and a few plays here and there determined that game. Well, Bayside Academy beat Hillcrest Evergreen, and it was kind of that same way. 28-20 was the final in that game. So can they make things interesting? Absolutely. And I know TR Miller stood atop not only the region standings, but the state rankings all season long. But I don't think that it just pigeonholes them as the winner of this football game. And I know Coach Brent Hubbard is not looking at it that way. He understands that he's got to win that game there on Friday night. But, there's been a few teams that I think that have been kind of flying under the radar all season long. Bayside Academy is certainly one of those football teams. But they have a huge chance to make a big and a strong statement coming up this week in that big game against TR Miller. Yep,
for sure. No question. Gee, I know that I had kind of tasked you with maybe the impossible over here, but did you?
Well, yes. And so to answer the question that we had about WS Neal's chances, yes, they have a chance. But let's diagnose where they sit right now. They have 3 losses on the season right now in region. Let's talk about region games first of all. Ahead of them right now is Orange Beach and Mobile Christian. WS Neal lost to both those football teams. So even if both those teams lost, then, even if it goes down to a head-to-head, in any of the situations, WS Neal does not have the head-to-head against either of those. And then to add on top of that, WS Neal still has 2 more games left to finish out the season. Those 2 games are against TR Miller. A game against Mobile Christian, a game against TR Miller. So the the WS Neal Mobile Christian game will be huge, but they don't have the advantage over St. Michael in the head-to-head. St. Michael already won that football game. Of course, they lost to Jackson and Orange Beach as well. So Orange Beach head-to-head, St. Michael head-to-head.
So if Orange Beach is in,
right,
and Mobile Christian and WS Neal are playing this week,
correct,
there's a reason to stand that they would both be 3-3 should WS Neal beat Mobile Christian.
Right. Right. And
then going into the final week is a region game?
Going into the final week is a non-region game against TR Miller. Now,
So the winner of that game,
theoretically, yes.
Theoretically, nothing. I mean, Orange Beach is already in, dog. Like they have that win, right? So WS Neal and Mobile Christian,
right?
Orange Beach is already in. They already beat them up
for sure.
So there are only 2 losses. I mean, right? Am I messing? I mean, they lost Mobile Christian. Why is that premature? Is that Orange Beach? Is that premature?
Which one?
Them being in the playoffs?
Orange Beach being in the playoffs premature?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think they would say it if it were. If you do like a round robin here, TBD, guys. We'll keep things rolling here. I feel pretty confident that they wouldn't say that they were in, but the tiebreakers get crazy. We were sitting back here racking our minds trying to figure out. At the end of the day, Mobile Christian beats WS Neal. They're a lock for the playoffs.
Correct.
And they have the head-to-head with Orange Beach, which would make them the 3 if Orange Beach were to beat St. Michael this week. Let's just say that does not happen, and that Orange Beach falls to 3-3 in region play. And Mobile Christian beats WS Neal.
Right.
They're 4-2. One, they're already going to have a better record for starters, so they're going to be in the playoffs regardless. Mm-hmm. And then Orange Beach has beat WS Neal, so they would have that head-to-head at 3-3. They would be the 4. So I think that's why Orange Beach feels good about them being in.
About their spot.
There's no question. I mean, Wade Waldrop's done this before. The guy's been, he made all types of playoff runs. He knows when they're in or not. So
WS Neal, if they do beat Mobile Christian, and that drops both those teams down to 3 region losses, be 3-3 for both those teams.
They would be in over Mobile Christian.
Then they would be in as far as over Mobile Christian, because obviously they would have the head-to-head. And the tiebreaker, for those who aren't familiar, the tiebreaker is exactly. If there's a 3-way tiebreaker, it goes to your non-region games. But one of WS Neal's non-region games is against Bluntstown out of Florida. The way they do that is they hypothetically put that school in Alabama, and wherever they would be in Alabama, based on enrollment, where they would be in Alabama. I'm not privy to that information right now.
Yeah, sure.
But that would be one of the games that they would have as far as a win goes.
So here's what Mobile Christian's looking at: win and you're the 3, lose and you're out. That's pretty much the deal. I mean, that's pretty much the deal. Because even if Orange Beach were to beat St. Michael, both teams would have 4 wins, and Mobile Christian would have the head-to-head over Orange Beach. If they lose W.S. Neal, they both fall to 3-3. They're 3-3. W.S. Neal improves to 3-3, and W.S. Neal has the head-to-head, and they are the 4. So yes, to answer your question, you had everybody sitting here thinking here, Rodney, and so I appreciate the question because it certainly does give us some insight on the significance of those games. And when you're covering 40-plus teams, well, it gets a little hairy. So, we do our best to keep on track, and we feel like we do a pretty good job of that, but you never know.
And some fall through the cracks, and especially a lot of times what you do in your mind is you kind of dismiss a team that's 3-5 on the season, not knowing the way that they can snake into the playoffs. Yeah. It looks like WS Neal. They could just put it together here at the very end of the season. They can find their way into the playoffs, probably with a losing record. They might be 4-6, 4-5 going into the playoff game. So we'll find out.
Yeah, we will certainly find out. Let's refer back to the playoff board, which clearly is not, at least totally. It had not a lot. It had some assumptions. All right, somebody asked about 1A Region 1, and here's now that I do know. That I do have very, very, very good confidence in. So here's the deal when it comes to Leroy, Sweetwater, and Milry. There's a lot that you might think could happen, and this is just the truth of the matter, okay? If Leroy wins, do you have this pulled up?
Yeah, I have the standings pulled up, but then we also have, there's a...
No. I know how this works here, okay?
There's another carousel.
So here's how this works, all right? If Leroy wins... And I would say that they're the favorite to win. Okay, they're undefeated in the region. They win the region title. So this is a big rivalry game between Milry and Leroy. So Leroy plays Milry. If they win, the game's be at Milry. Leroy wins. They are the region champ.
Right.
Okay. If Sweetwater wins
against Southern
Choctaw.
Right.
In Milry, I'm laughing because I know that I went over this like 100 times. This is what needs to happen. I have this playoff scenario actually in my phone specifically because I reached out to the coach's wife, and if y'all don't understand how much us coaches' wives know, I'm about to teach you. Okay, because if you are a locked-in coach's wife, you have this playoff scenario. You're already looking at what this could look like. Weeks before, and you're doing when the math is mathing. Okay, so shout out to Allison Lowe. It's Coach Lowe's wife.
Shout out Allison Lowe.
I said, hey, lady, I'm sitting here doing all this math. Explain this to me. Y'all are the region champs regardless of the outcome Friday. Now, here's a caveat. Even if y'all were to lose and Sweetwater to win, it's a 3-way tie. Okay, so that's where things get a little hairy. If they were to lose and Sweetwater wins, it's a 3-way tie. And Leroy is still the champ. Here's where Leroy could not possibly win the region title. If Leroy wins and Sweetwater loses, if Leroy loses and Sweetwater loses, then there's no longer a 3-way tie, and the Milry win would give them the tiebreaker because those would be the only 1-loss teams in the region, right? So right now, Sweetwater has 1 loss. If they were to lose, and they'll play at Southern Choctaw in a game that they're probably favored to win. If they were to lose that game and Milry beats Leroy, Milry is the region champ.
Right.
Now, that took some diagnosing.
Right. Because we're having all these teams think of it in losses. As of right now, Leroy has 0 losses. As of right now, Sweetwater has 1 loss. Milry has 1 loss. Southern Choctaw has 2 losses. And all these teams will play one another coming up in this next week. So there's a situation to where, obviously you just mentioned if Leroy loses, that is their 1 loss. But that 1 loss is huge because it's to Milry.
Yes.
And then Milry would jump and be that number 1 seed, as you mentioned.
Yeah. And Ryan, appreciate the question. I see that if Milry beats Leroy, they will still be the 3 seed due to Milry losing to Clark County. And that's not true because at least not necessarily when it comes to other possible outcomes. Milry can still win a region title. If Sweetwater loses, they will be 5-2 in region play. If Milry beats Leroy, both of those teams finish at 6-1. Okay, and Milry has the head-to-head over Leroy.
Right.
So if I'm Milry, I'm going into this game obviously knowing that the implications just from the rivalry aspect, the bragging rights, and how much it just means to both towns and communities. But also, you can't determine what's going to happen over at Southern Choctaw. Now, the reason that they play the games, I think Sweetwater is favored to win that game at Southern Choctaw. But if Milroy beats Leroy, and both of those teams finish as 6-1 on the season in region play, they're the only 6-1 teams. And Sweetwater is 5-2. There's no longer a three-way tie.
Right.
So they're going to drop down to be the 3. And the 2 6-1 teams are going to be the top 2. Milroy's going to have the advantage there because of the head-to-head. They're the region champs.
I love that.
This is why I love playoff football.
And you have to love it in this specific situation because, like you said, you have some.
I would rather take the math portion of the ACT than do this math. Thanks for y'all. John Williams, thank you.
You're
I'm
welcome.
actually sweating. I feel like I'm going to end up on like a, I don't know, we're like football scoop, the high school football scoop where someone's like, look at this person trying to talk. I know what I'm talking about, you guys, okay? Like,
but I think this situation
the
is
second
so...
that you misspeak, everyone's going to be on you. It's like, she misspoke. Listen, that's a scenario that I double checked with the head coach's wife.
Yeah,
that's how I was that thorough about it, you guys. Shout out to Allison Lowe.
And it's also this what I love about high school football in this region, and as we've talked about before, these regions are set at the beginning of the season, and it's not like slated. It's all basically random. But to have 0 loss as of right now, 0 losses, 1 loss, 1 loss, 2 loss, and all 4 play one another. That can shake up just about everything. But as you mentioned, if Southern Choctaw were to come back and to beat Sweetwater, throws a monkey wrench into all of this. Yeah. If there's a 3-way tie, we kind of know the scenario as it stands right now. And so, I would think that a lot of people out there don't know a lot of the tiebreaker playoff situations, and that's why we're trying to clarify it as much as possible.
And it can get hairy in a lot of these situations where it's just not as clear cut, because when it goes into the 3-way tiebreakers, and in some cases even more team. I mean, when you have those kind of what I call the round robin wins and losses, they beat them, right? Then you really have to go to non-region. Then once you figure out the 3-way tie, it goes back to head-to-head, and so. When you're married to a high school football coach, you do have an advantage because my husband knows the rule book and the tiebreakers like the back of his hand, probably better than he knows me and our marriage, honestly. So, there's advantages to that because he can correct me if I'm wrong, and Lord knows he will if I certainly misspeak. And when it comes to any of this, so
well, also if you're coaching though too, you're doing scouting, and so you now are playing out games in your head in the future because you're like, oh, this team's good here, this team's good here. If this team beats this team, what does that mean for us? And so there's a lot of that going on.
Well, when I was sitting there trying to tell him Friday night after everything went down what was happening in 7A, I'm like, okay, so here, this is the 1 through 4. He's like, babe, these are the matchups already. I'm like, okay, and he named
the tiebreaker game. It's like they're in because of this. The Fairhope. Theodore game.
It was exhausting.
He can recall a September game that would break a tie in November.
High school football coaches, but he can't remember to take the trash out. Anyways, so okay, that's for the late night show edition of Sports 5 Talk. We don't broadcast that one live. Okay. So if you were here for the top of the show, we're going to talk about college football in just a second, but I do want to get back quickly to kind of maybe what is going to be the most intriguing playoff scenario entering the last 2 weeks of the high school football regular season. And that's going to be in Class 6A, where we wait and see what things are going to look like. Of course, there are 3 teams kind of vying for that last playoff spot. We know that Saraland, Spanish Fort, and St. Paul's are going to be a lock. The only thing we know in terms of the shakeup of those 3 teams is that Saraland is the region champ in 6A Region 1. Spanish Fort and St. Paul's will determine who is going to be the 2 in that region next week. Now, we'll see what happens when it comes to this number 4 spot for McGill-Tulane, Theodore, and Gulf Shores, because those 3 teams have all played each other already. So we know what those would be when it comes to the head-to-head scenarios. That's not going to matter when it comes to this 3-way kind of, again, round-robin game, so to speak. So right now, if everything goes chalk, meaning the teams that we think are going to win this week and next week, Theodore's going to have the advantage because of their non-region win over Fairhope. And that would give them the 4 seed. But it's not over until it's over. McGill-Tulane, win or lose against Spanish Fort, still has an opportunity to be in there. They're going to need a little bit of help. Gulf Shores still has an opportunity to be there. They're going to need a little bit of help. So who knows? I mean, Gerhard, this is like any given Friday.
And I think, and we've talked about this so many times in this specific region, just how much every game truly matters here. And when we've talked about the teams that have 4 losses at the end of all of this, there will be teams with 4 losses. I think 4 losses.
We take a nap at the end of all of this.
will be the teams that are playing for that round robin spot for that 4th seed. And we knew that this region was already tough, but then you added another team and you added Gulf Shores. We knew that there was 1, possibly 2 really good football teams that would be left at home. And now we're finding out. Now we're making those determinations about which one of those 2 teams it'll be. As it sits as we stand right now, the 4 teams in, as you mentioned, are already Saraland, Spanish Fort, St. Paul's, and as you mentioned, Theodore because of that win over Fairhope. But as you said, still lots of football to be played, 2 region games apiece for most of those teams.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting for sure. Theodore is going to be at home their last 2 games. It's going to be Saraland and then Blunt at home. And so I feel like they're going to be in a good position. If they end up with 4, if they end up 4-4 in the region, that would be a loss to Saraland and a win over Blunt. They're going to be the team. That's pretty much just how that goes, right? At this point, you're trying to, if you're one of the other 2 teams, you're hoping for Theodore to drop a game against Blunt, and maybe a little other help depending on which one of you are. So
and you, like I said, you have to forecast a little bit. And you can't do transitive proproperty. You can't do transitive property. Yeah, exactly. And you can't do transitive property in this region because you can't say Team A beat Team B and Team B beat Team C, so Team A is going to beat Team C. It just doesn't work here in this region.
Certainly not in 6A Region 1. No doubt about that. All right, guys. As we move forward, just know that we're going to talk college football now. However, you're going to have the chance to rewatch this. Of course, we've been going for the last hour breaking down every single region, and you'll have the opportunity to kind of play that back. We talk 7 through 1A. Some of these regions already determined, and some of them still up for grabs. Meanwhile, talking college football, what's going on in Tuscaloosa? It's a good question. Bama has lost 2 of their last 3. Most recently, of course, the 3rd Saturday in October as the Tide fall to Tennessee, Gerhard, in a game that, man, a lot of concerns, a lot of what was this, and where do you go from here? And I think that they're trying to keep everything in perspective, not look too far ahead as you look at, want to look at the playoff scenario. Can a 2-loss Alabama team be in the 12-team playoff? This is all uncharted waters. No one really has an answer to that.
We knew going into this season it would be really interesting. We did not think Alabama would go to the Volunteer State and lose twice. Once to Vandy and then to also Tennessee. And this has been a weird season. And I think, Simone, what makes this season so kind of extra weird, so to speak, is the fact that you can't pinpoint it on one thing because the defense had their struggles, obviously in the Vanderbilt game, giving up 40. And then the offense had their struggles last week against Tennessee, scoring 17 points, only 75 rushing yards. We saw some things with Jalen Milroe that we haven't seen throughout the course of the season up till now. This team has just not played consistent football over the last few weeks, and I think it's a little concerning. But as you said, because of the fact that we do have this 12-team playoff, it's not last week was not the death knell that it is every other year in the history of college football. It's not
good. I mean,
it ain't good. It ain't good. And I think now, and we've heard coaches now talk about, well, let's just focus on now. Let's focus on now because you get too much in your head about what's up for the future, and you don't focus on where your feet are. You could up and lose a 3rd game, and then you're done.
Yeah, and right now, I mean, Missouri is no chump either. I mean, they're coming in.
Missouri's good.
Yeah, I mean,
they're a good football team.
I mean, if you were watching the Auburn game, and I mean, I'm sure some Bama fans at least had an eye on that game because Brady Cook came back and said, I'm going to just resurrect this team after going on a 2-hour hiatus to the hospital and then the field house and come back on a bum ankle and lead the Tigers to a victory in the final minute. And so, they're going to come in here licking their chops because they're only a 1-loss SEC team. And so their opportunity, or 1 loss in any, I think there's 1 loss on the year in totality. So they're very much in the conversation for the 12-team playoff. I mean, I say it every single year, and even with an expanded playoff, I still feel glad that I'm not the ones in the room having to make that decision. I don't know when the first playoff comes out, but it's going to be difficult, and there's going to be people mad. There's going to be, and you knew that. You knew whoever's 13 through 18 is going to feel like they were left out. And there's going to be teams that are 1-loss teams left out. There's going to be 2-loss teams left out. And right now, I'm not sure that anybody can say in good faith that Alabama is the 3rd best team in the SEC. And that's what they would have to be in the playoffs. Because the top 2 teams
Yeah.
by region
Right.
are going to be in
They're
the
going to
SEC
be in.
title game.
Yeah.
They're going to be in the playoffs.
Right.
The winner of obviously that's the automatic bid. The loser of the game is probably going to be a 1-loss team, maybe undefeated, depending on how it shakes. I'd have to look to see exactly who, and there's undefeated teams left. Do they play each other? They do. I think Texas A&M and is it LSU they play at some point? Yeah. So it's going to be a 1-loss team and maybe an undefeated team, maybe a 1-loss teams. But those 2 teams are going to be in the playoffs. So does anyone right now feel that they can say in good faith that Alabama is the 3rd best team in the SEC?
I don't know if you can. I mean, look.
The answer is no.
From a pure talent standpoint, and everybody's going to point to the Georgia game, obviously. And
no, they're going to point to the Georgia first half.
Yeah, exactly.
Their last 14 quarters of football have been 14 quarters of football that you wish to never have watched again if you're a Bama fan.
Have not been good. And I think a lot of SEC fans, after Texas A&M destroyed Missouri, I think a lot of people just kind of wrote Missouri off. And Missouri since then destroyed UMass and then beat Auburn. I think a lot of people at the beginning of the season just put Texas A&M out of their brain after Texas A&M lost that very first game to Notre Dame.
I try to keep Texas A&M out of my brain.
Well, Texas A&M is they haven't lost since then, and they haven't lost an SEC game at all. So
and nobody's cheering for LSU,
and we haven't even mentioned Texas and Georgia. It's and LSU as well. So
I mean, right now Alabama is so far down in the middle of the SEC standings that I can't even see them down there.
Teams with more losses in the SEC, teams with less losses in the SEC than Alabama.
Hold your breath.
Texas A&M, LSU, Georgia, Tennessee, Missouri, Texas, and Vandy.
So it's an uphill climb. It's not impossible. It's an uphill climb. Nobody wants to be sitting here on October 23rd not being able to control your own destiny. If there was one thing that Nick Saban said all the time when they would lose a game in the SEC, it was all of our goals still lie ahead and we control our own destiny. Right now, I don't know if either one of those are true for Alabama. They certainly don't control their own destiny.
No.
They're going to need a little bit of help. And I'm not sure if all of their goals lie ahead, if their goals include a national title. However, I say all that to say I don't know if it's time to hit the panic button. Because everyone's sitting here calling for the heads of Kalen DeBoer and calling for the heads of Kane Womack and Nick Sheridan. Pump the brakes a little bit. Take a deep breath. There's a reason Vanderbilt's winning football games. There's a reason Tennessee is good, and they haven't been good in so long. There's a reason that Missouri is a conversation. I mean, Missouri was a bye week for pretty much every team in the SEC. Vandy definitely was.
Yeah.
For decades.
Better part of
college football
years.
Is not the same.
No.
We're in uncharted waters.
No.
Everybody's paying everybody now, okay?
Yeah.
It's fair.
Yeah.
It's not just a couple teams paying a couple guys, and that's why, we saw the BCS title games in the way that we saw it, okay? Everybody's paying everybody. The parity's going to be there. The losses are going to come. Well, how do you respond? Can you be one of those teams that's there in the end? Can you stay healthy? And I think that you have to know that with this new regime of a coaching staff at Alabama, things are going to look different, G.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not Nick Saban because Nick Saban walked away. Nick Saban was not fired.
Right.
No one told Nick Saban to go. He said, I don't want to deal with this anymore.
Right.
And he left.
Yeah, and it's this new era of college football, and I think that he was really transparent about the way the game has changed.
Yeah.
And at the same time, remember when Kalen DeBoer was hired, 49 hours after Nick Saban told his team that he was no longer coaching college football. One of the things that Kalen DeBoer said when he came in is he wanted to respect every tradition, and he did exactly that in the offseason.
Yeah.
But he wanted to bring his own system, his own level, not just on the field, but philosophy off the field.
Yeah.
As he should. To criticize it right now, I think it's a little bit premature. I mean, if they win out, they're a 10-win team, 2 losses. I mean, like you said,
you're right there in the mix, depending on how it all shakes out. Yeah.
Right. You would need the committee to do you a favor and be able to get you in. But at the same time, too, I think that this is a Bama team that has shown in spots that they can be one of the best teams.
Yeah.
And it's just, hey, can you put it all together when it really matters? To me, this is a perfect test. A Missouri team that flew under the radar, but now got everybody's attention as we speak right now. And a team that themselves, they're thinking playoff.
Yeah.
Right now, they're thinking playoff, and I don't see why not. I mean, they beat Texas A&M, they lost Texas A&M, by a million points, 40-something points, 41 points, 31 points in that game. But this to me is kind of the calling card for Coach Kalen DeBoer, Nick Sheridan, Kane Womack, that entire coaching staff. What do you do in this situation? Much like those Alabama teams with one loss when Nick Saban was there.
Yeah, and speaking of Kane Womack, nobody to put it, keep everything in perspective and keep the main thing, as he has so often says. Quote. It's my favorite line in America.
You know what? 15 seconds here, Simone. Here in the
media,
we
15 seconds.
We get a lot of what we call coach speak. Yeah. We're used to this. I mean, we get it all the time, and people are trained to say what they say, and you hear a lot of the same phrases.
I don't even know if it's training with him.
It's a lot of the same phrases. Keep the main thing is one that just kind of gripes my friend here.
Yeah, I love Kane Womack.
It's not isolated to him. A lot of people say
I just think he says it a lot.
He does say it a lot.
And he said it a lot in the soundbite. We're going to play it right now. And this pretty much was talking about what his message has been to this Alabama team while they're in the locker room and how to keep things in perspective as they navigate not only an uncharted SEC schedule with the no longer having divisions, but also uncharted waters and having lost 2 of their last 3 games. Take a listen.
I talked to the players yesterday. All that should be on our minds is what do we have to do to beat Missouri on Saturday. And anything outside of that is a distraction and does not keep focus on the main thing. And ultimately, during adverse times, right, that's what you have to do is keep the main thing, stay focused on the task at hand. And I think our guys are doing a really good job in that.
Main thing, the main thing.
The main thing.
And you know what? It's true. I mean, it's true. This is in anything, in any level of sport. Mm-hmm. You have to focus on what's right in front of you. Go 1-0, right? That's another zinger. I add that to the board of things I love to hear from coaches. Main thing. Go 1-0.
Go 1-0 this week.
Yeah, and then that's got to be the goal. Yeah. Alabama is 2:30 kickoff at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Meanwhile, in Auburn, you go ahead and take this one.
0-4 in the SEC. And I think Coach Hugh Freeze said it the best when he had his Monday morning press conference. One of the best things he says is, it feels like we're playing not to lose. And he even put it on his coaches.
Yeah.
They're not playing to win, and sometimes it comes out in play calling, whether it's scheme, whether it's execution. This, to me, is an Auburn football team. They just need a win. Now, will it come easily? No, it wouldn't, because last week they had a lead. They lost it. They played well in spurts against Georgia. They lost it. This upcoming week, they got a Kentucky defense that's already super mad for what they did happen last week after losing to Florida, giving up 1 million points. This is not an easy stretch here for the Auburn.
Wasn't it supposed to be a rivalry game for them? Isn't it like a rivalry, Kentucky and Florida? In their own little minds.
Yes,
I mentioned them. You know, I mean, like that. I mean, it's fine. They're respectable programs in the SEC.
Very, very much so. Producer Pat will not like that as a Gator fan.
I know. Pat's over there. Pat's over there just saying bad things about me under his breath right now. But anyways, but nonetheless, Kentucky it was not great, and last week. Auburn has not been great for a little while now. And it's honestly, it's frustrating, I think, the most for Auburn fans, because you knew coming into this season that the personnel, top to bottom, like what the personnel you felt like, the recruiting, what it looked like, is not matching the results on the field. Mm-hmm. Nobody's more frustrated than the guys in that locker room and then that coaching staff who knows that it should look better on paper right now in terms of what it wins and losses than what it does. Fans are obviously equally frustrated. I don't think that we just punt on Hugh Freeze being the guy at Auburn by any means, but I do think that there are some things where you kind of have to figure out, okay, why aren't we running the ball? Peyton Thorne is taking the decision making out of his hands. And so right now, Auburn's going to go back on the road against Kentucky. And in a minute, we'll look at, I guess, what the rest of the season looks like. Where do the wins come from Auburn if they are there? But make no mistake, if there is a winnable game in the SEC left, this Saturday at 6:45 in Lexington is the game. And here's what Hugh Freeze had to say regarding Kentucky's loss last week to Florida, and how he's really just not taking a lot of that into consideration.
I know Coach Stoops. He will not be happy with their performance, and they will be working on fitting the run this week like they have every other game. I mean, that is a total outlier, which it's just that hasn't been the case. If you go look at the rushing stats against them on all the other teams, Georgia included, all of them, they're not that. I hope they play like that, but it's probably doubtful. I think Lexington at night and the home game for them will probably get their best.
Gerhard, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
What do you think about that soundbite?
To me, it's very honest, and I think that if the Auburn offense watches that tape and thinks,
what do you think? What do you think about the energy of that soundbite?
Oh, I mean, on the energy level, on a scale of 1 to 10, it was about a -6 to 12.
That's the question I was asking.
Yeah.
Not the content of what he said.
Well,
Just how it was said.
From an energy standpoint, and I know those press conferences happen in the morning, so maybe there's a little bit of just natural
Gerhard
drowsiness in
Mathangani.
there.
Gerhard Mathangani.
I'm just trying to say if there's any comma but this. If Coach Freeze were here to defend himself, it'd be like, okay, well, yeah,
I'm not even trying to go at Coach Freeze.
I know,
Coach
but
Freeze
I'm just
is a
saying.
friend. I mean, I consider Coach Freeze a friend. I do wish, if you're an Auburn fan and you're watching that, you're like, bro,
there's not much hope here.
come on, man.
Just be a little bit more live. And I think that he's a guy looking for answers. And I think a lot of times when when those answers aren't coming,
he can answer them better than anybody else.
You try again, and you try again, you try again. It'll be different. Here's the thing. This is not UMass, and no offense if you're a Minuteman fan. This is not UMass. This is not Kent State.
That's my point.
This is a team that's not losing by 5 touchdowns every week. This is a team that led this game in the second half, in the fourth quarter, that led last year against Georgia, that led in the game earlier this season against Oklahoma before Oklahoma came back. This is a team that feels that they're right there on the precipice. And so, to me, the energy doesn't match how razor thin these margins have been. And I mean, let's play the win-loss game. You talked about it earlier.
That's what I'm saying. So they're going to be at Kentucky, and that's a winnable game.
Yeah.
And they're all winnable. They play the games for the reason. So I'm not trying to be that guy. And I mean, Cole Kublik and I do a show where we talk about this, and he went through and gave the silver lining in each game, so to speak. And it's not like you're going out there to play them, but they're all losable too. And that sounds like, well, yeah. I mean, like I sound like Trent Dilfer right now saying, you win. And what was his quote?
Every game's winnable, every game's losable. I don't
No,
think he
it was
said that.
like you have to win in the NFL. I don't even know, but it was funny. Anyways, okay. No knock, actually knock. But so this is a winnable game.
Yeah.
Then they're going to go to home and they're going to play Vanderbilt.
A ranked Vanderbilt team that beat
a,
Alabama.
A Vanderbilt team that's feeling good about life.
That is led by Pavia, who beat Auburn last year on the Plains, wearing the New Mexico State jersey.
Yeah, and his offensive coordinator, former offensive coordinator,
Exactly.
and they are running things very well there for the Doors. When you look at what's after, I mean, then it's ULM, right?
And it's ULM.
And ULM is 6-1, 5-1. They're gonna
5-1.
They're gonna be at South. We'll talk about South game in just a second, but I mean ULM, man, like there's a reason that they're getting like national attention. I don't mean they're in the national rankings. I mean they're getting national attention for good reason. They've only lost to Texas, who is what are they ranked?
Texas.
They're up there.
Anyways,
they lost to Texas by a lot, but they're undefeated in Sun Belt Conference play. This is a team that was picked to finish last in Sun Belt Conference play, led by Bryant Vincent, who is former Spanish Fort head football coach, actually, back in 2010, led the Toros to their first state title. Then he was at South Alabama as the offensive coordinator. Then he was at UAB. Then he was the UAB interim coach. Now he's, and they pretty much did him kind of dirty there at UAB. He didn't get the head job despite leading that program in the way that, I mean, a heck of a lot better way than it, on paper at least, when it looks at how it looks right now. That's just the truth. That's real talk.
Yeah.
Listen, man, football's numbers game. This is a win-loss game, period.
Yeah.
Especially at the college level.
Right.
You can pay a lot of money to win games.
Yeah. And there's no question who's been the better team this year.
Yeah.
No question.
And they beat them.
Yeah.
They beat them.
Exactly.
I mean, ULM beat UAB. Anyways, so he goes to ULM, and now they're a one-loss team. And they've done significant things. Who knows what that looks like?
Mm-hmm. And
against Auburn,
and like we said, that's a game. Obviously, Auburn will be favored by 2 or 3 touchdowns in it, but you can't do that. What happened last year, right before the Iron Bowl?
Yeah, yep.
Alabama or
Rodney just said, "Bring back Gus." He must be a Bama fan. Well, who's after that? Let's get through this Auburn stuff. This is making me like sweat.
After ULM, it's only the to answer your question about Texas. Texas is number 5 in the AP poll, number 6 in the coaches poll, and who knows where they'll be in the college football standings. And so
when do the playoffs come out?
Actually, hang on a second.
It's not. No, it's probably next week.
Yeah. Well, I would think either next week. Sorry for Auburn after ULM, Texas A&M, and then Bama. Those are the 2.
Those aren't easy.
No, I mean 3 of their next 4 teams are ranked, and the non-ranked team is a good ULM team.
Yeah. So we'll see, guys. There's no telling what that one looks like for Auburn. Who knows? I mean, knowing Auburn and the way that things have gone and have been back and forth in every capacity, they could go win the last 5 and play a bowl game.
We've seen it before, not at Auburn, but we've seen it in different places.
My husband's an Auburn fan, and he actually said that. He's like, I think they win 4. They win 4. And I'm like,
perpetual hope. Gotta love it.
Got to. Meanwhile, we are looking forward to South Alabama, who will return home this week to host Louisiana Monroe. We just talked about ULM and Bryant Vincent. There's no doubt this game means as much to him, not as much as like the UAB, like beat UAB, but in regards to the conference standings and what this means in terms of that regard. Like it's a big game. It's a big game for ULM. He wants to come in here and put on a good showing in Mobile, a place where he recruits. He has a lot of guys on his roster right now who are Mobile natives. He himself has local ties, having coached at Spanish Fort. And on the other hand, South Alabama doesn't want to have maybe what they would consider as a hookup, or a hiccup, I should say, not hookup. Lord have mercy. Wow, a hiccup. Shut up, G. So the Jags will host the Warhawks. And that's a 4 o'clock kick?
That is a 4 o'clock kick. That is a 4 o'clock kick.
It's 9:22. Things start to fall off the rails a little bit.
9:15 is the line of demarcation.
Literally. Don't worry, guys. We're gonna get out of here in a minute. But nonetheless, a big opportunity for South Alabama to kind of separate themselves. I know that they have a loss right now in conference play, but other than that, I mean, South feeling good after that win over Troy, a dominant win over Troy. Troy is not as good as that they have been, but right now, this team had got back on track in Sun Belt Conference play, and I think they go into this game with a lot of confidence.
And I think you look at the West, and keep in mind the Sun Belt is the only conference with division still, but the West right now is absolutely loaded. You mentioned UL Monroe, undefeated in conference play. So is Louisiana. Texas State, Arkansas State, South Alabama all have one loss. So this game is monumental as far as being able to climb in the Western Division standings. This game against Troy was huge. I know they were a 2-touchdown favorite in this matchup, but I think what it really brought to this football team is, hey, we know what we need to do to be able to win these tough games. And ULM, they have a chip on their shoulder. And if you listen to Coach Bryant Vincent, you mentioned his ties to South Alabama. Another one of the things he harps on is the fact that they were picked dead last in this conference. And I think that they've gone into every game knowing that, using that as the momentum, and using that as kind of a rallying cry for this team. And also, ULM has also been homecoming for a lot of different teams throughout the Sun Belt. He rattled them off. He was like, we've been homecoming for several games this season.
If there's a coach that keeps receipts, it's Bryant Vincent.
It's Bryant Vincent.
And this guy knows more stats.
Yeah.
And has more in his back pocket of like, I'm going to pull this out in this moment than anyone I've ever seen. I kind of love it.
Yeah, exactly. And he knew time of possession. He's known where South Alabama ranks in every way, shape, form. So if you're
we have a sound from Major and from Bryant Vincent. We'll play that right quick before we look at the rest of the national games, I guess, that are going to be on the radar, so to speak. Here's Major and Bryant Vincent talking about this weekend's matchup.
Goes back to Coach Applewhite. He does a really good job in situational football. They're good offensively. You know, they're 40% in third down. They're 60% on fourth down. They're 6 for 10, so they're going to go for it. Possessions are going to be at a premium. They're going to be at a premium, and every snap's going to be a big deal.
There's a reason why they're 5-1. It's not luck. You turn on the tape, you see them beating teams. You don't see a lot of mistakes. They're executing at a very high level, shrinking the game in some situations, but playing the game the right way, and this is a very quality opponent.
All right, so both teams certainly know what's at stake, even though there's a month of football left to be played. This is a game that, in terms of bragging rights, in terms of what you can do and kind of just make your mark midway through your conference schedule, an opportunity there really for both teams.
Yeah, and we mentioned it. This is a big game for the division. And keep in mind, the group of 5 will only have one guaranteed game or one guaranteed team in. And so, okay, can South make a run and only have one loss at the end of the season and be the champion of this conference? Very much at stake. Same thing with ULM.
Yeah, we will see. So, again, for our hyper local college football teams, Alabama is going to be at home against Missouri. Top 21 matchup there with, it's a must-win for Alabama to stay into the national picture. Auburn looking for their first SEC victory as they stay on the road. They go to Kentucky now. South Alabama at home against ULMG. What other games, I guess, SEC, nationwide, local ties in terms of Florida, Mississippi, we'll be keeping an eye on?
Yeah, well, obviously a lot of games. And I think one of the most interesting games to me, Texas A&M and LSU. This was a game that we normally saw a little bit later at the end of the year. They're going to Kyle Field. So LSU going over to Texas A&M, that's a big one. Texas at Vanderbilt. Can Vandy do it again? Can they come in, face a top 5 team? They did it against Alabama. Can they do it against the Longhorns? Longhorns, of course, coming off that loss last week against Georgia. Our good buddy Riley Leonard, the quarterback at Notre Dame, they have a really interesting matchup this week, Simone. They're going to play Navy at the Service Academy. Still undefeated on the season.
Crazy.
That's a game is at Navy. So it's a really interesting game there. Washington, Indiana is a really interesting game as well. And then I saw another one that I wanted to highlight. Kansas State. We see that at the end of the year every year. It's kind of watered down a little bit now after Kansas State lost a couple weeks ago. But no, to me, those are the interesting ones. Oklahoma, Ole Miss this week as well. That's a big one. It's an 11 o'clock game. That's kind of interesting there.
That is interesting.
That they would put those two at 11. But Oklahoma's kind of falling on hard times, and there's people calling for Brent Venables' job there as well.
They just fired their offensive coordinator, wasn't
it? Yes, I think they demoted.
I thought they fired him.
I think they did. They've needed to fire offensive coordinator for the last 2 seasons, but that's neither here nor there.
Gerhard with the hot takes. He has those for local teams. He just chooses not to say them out loud on this platform.
But yeah, those are the SEC games. Arkansas, Mississippi State is the other game in the SEC 11:45 kickoff there in Starkville.
Yeah. Well, right before we sign off here, and I know that Pat is begging us to get off the air, we did have a viewer say, yes, the Washington County football coach did step down. And honestly, if I had more information as to really what led to that, I would give it to you on this platform. There is some talk that is there a possibility that we're going to hear from the state? We just saw Pike Lib forfeit 6 games. Mm-hmm. It is that time of year where teams start to throw other teams under the bus. So they've waited. They've held, an illegal recruiting situation in their back pocket for 7 weeks, and now they're going to pull it out so they can improve their playoff situation. It happens every single year.
Every year.
And this is why you got to have all your checks and balances and take care of all the stuff you need to take care of when it comes to your eligibility stuff with your players. So I don't want to. I'm not going to sit here and I'm going to guess. Washington County football is supposed to be the 3 in that region. They're without their head coach. Will something come down the pipe? I don't know. The truth of the matter is I don't know. So we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see what it looks like.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic going into the final few weeks of the season with a shot at the playoffs there. So something is big. Obviously, we don't want to speculate till something comes out.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting to follow, that's for sure.
Yeah. Guys, this has been a super entertaining hour and a half. This is probably the longest show that we've done, but honestly, it's enjoyable every single time. Yeah. Appreciate everybody that has tuned in and have given their feedback, given their input about high school football, college football, and all of the likes. We will continue to chat about things on Fifth Quarter Extra on Friday night as we break down week 10 of the high school football season, and then look ahead to the final week, which will have a huge determining factor on several regions as we kind of break down the playoff picture and who is in and who is on the outside and who's going to be sitting at home there for round 1. So we're looking forward to it for sure. We will join you again here on this platform on Friday evening about 11 p.m. for Fifth Quarter Extra. We have certainly appreciated you guys tuning in, all of the interaction. Be sure to watch the replay. We break down the playoff picture going into Friday night and kind of what to expect from our coverage and what this will shape up to be in 7A through 1A Region 1. So guys, for Gerhard Mathangani, Pat O'Donnell, and everybody here at WKRG News 5, I'm Simone Eli, and we will see you on Friday.